Now, let me get your perspective on this. I know you've had cause to work with indigenous communities. What are the key challenges that is faced by these affected communities? I mean, uh, based on the analysis you've given and the recent killings, considering the interplay of criminality by bandits,
Yeah.
I know there's, and as well as the social tensions in that region.
Well, the major problem indigenous communities face is historical injustice, which is both political, economic, and cultural. For instance, there is from the economic perspective, when minerals are exploited from indigenous communities, there is no equitable sharing of resources with those that own the land. Most of the people that mine indigenous communities obtain their license from Abuja, and they come with armed men, policemen, and they mine those resources, and which amount to billions of, sometimes billions of dollars. And the indigenous people get nothing from the land that has been given to them by the creator. So they are not part of the process. There is no prior informed consent, of those communities in terms of beneficiary aspect of it. And then we also have the political aspect, where some indigenous communities, even though they own the land, they don't have access to political power because of sheer population. You know, you are an indigenous person, but unfortunately, you have people who have come to settle your land who are more in population than you. So when it's time to produce local government by sheer population, they produce local government chairman, they produce the senator, plus, they produce the all the political offices there are taken over by people that don't own the land. So there is political exclusion. And then in terms of cultural rights, indigenous communities are also denied of cultural rights. You find out that over the years they lose their language, they lose their knowledge of herbal medicine, they lose their knowledge of plants, they lose their knowledge of spirituality, lose their knowledge of the right to worship. Most of their worship centers, that have been there for thousands of years, have been taken over by miners, have been taken over by people who just come there to bulldoze the place and build all sorts of structures there. So there is cultural marginalization, there is spiritual marginalization, there is political exclusion, and then there is economic denial of access to resources. So when you combine all these problems together, it's not something that you can just come and resolve by mere decrees. Even when you are talking about making laws in democratic space, the indigenous people don't have access. For instance, look at indigenous people in Abuja. How many senators do they have?
Mm.
So when you are talking about Abuja that want to have a state, Abuja to be a state, they have just maybe only one senator representing the entire Abuja, which is made of about 9 ethnic groups in that community. So these are the challenges that they face. And over time, their voices are stifled, their grievances are bottled up, and it's now finding expression in various violent forms. Unfortunately, we have a situation where people think they can suppress them by force of arms. People who have access to political power, economic power, they think that look, we can come to your community and do our mining, and there's nothing you can do. They bring armed men, they bring soldiers, and even shoot some of these indigenous communities. So it's a kind of injustice that has been on for several years, and our various governments, have failed to do a surgical operation to look at the various layers of crisis, to isolate each one and deal with that layer on its own merit. They just come with a broad solution to say, okay, we have one united Nigeria, we make laws, everybody must accept unity of Nigeria. Unity of Nigeria is not negotiable. And you have forgotten that there are, strands, different strands of grievances that you have to sit down and address before you can be talking about a united and prosperous country. So we have failed to address this problem holistically. And that's why each time you see a lot of conflict coming up. Look at what is going on in Katsina, in Sokoto State. People are trying to gloss over it. But essentially, that is, it's question of land ownership. Because during the jihad of 1804, lands were taken over, you know, indigenous community also supported them, the Hausa community. But now there are questions about distribution of resources on this land.
Mm.
And that's why, unfortunately, we are seeing clashes for the first time between Hausa and Fulani people, which is not supposed to be. All along, we have been talking about Hausa Fulani as their one ethnic group. But now the division is becoming more sharpened. And there's been aggravated over the years by poor leadership, poor vision of people that control the political space, and lack of genuine commitment on the part of leaders to address these grievances. Most of the time when they want to address them, they address these problems from electoral perspective where they can harvest political gains. When it's time for election, they bring them together, but after election for 4 years, they do nothing. And unfortunately, we have a situation where it is assuming a life of its own, because it has now come to a situation where we have revenge killings. When people are killed, a particular ethnic group is massacred, the other group will now goes ahead to arm its own people and then to revenge. So, and then it has led to arms race between the ethnic groups. People are trying to acquire different arms to ensure that they overshadow the other. And of course, there is access to illicit arms so easily. I think the Office of United Nations in 2016 said that there are about 500 million illicit weapons in West Africa. And about 70% of them, that's about 350 million illicit arms, are in Nigeria and in the hands of non-stakeholders. So it means that Nigeria is saturated with weapons. The northwest, the northeast, the middle belt, the south, there are arms everywhere in the hands of non-state actors. And it's a very dangerous thing because it defines how fragile the state is. It undermines the authority of the state, the moral authority. That's why you see a lot of people do have respect for Nigerian laws, because they just feel that they are armed, so they can, dictate the pace of events. And I think if we are not careful, we may find ourselves in a situation where it will blow up to a situation that even the government would not be able to have control over the situation.
You earlier on you talked about the fact that the government itself, the federal government itself, has failed to address some of these underlying issues. Uh, Considering the government's response so far, what's your assessment considering government's response to the attacks in terms of both immediate action and long-term strategies in order to address the security challenges in those regions? How effective has it been in terms of addressing this problem?
Well, from what we have seen, the flashpoints, crisis leading areas, they need permanent peace. The aggressors, the victims of crime, the perpetrators of crime, if you ask them, you will discover that they are all looking for peace. But the fact of the matter is that peace has to be gradual. We need
That seems to be elusive at this point in time.
Yeah, it's elusive. It's not something you can just come and bring them together and then dictate to them, don't fight again, bury your arms, and then you go to peace. You go to sleep. It will not happen. You must understand, first of all, admit the problems. You must make a list, a scale of prevalence of the problems on the ground, and then know how to deal with each of them one by one. And I think the fact of the matter is that when we are talking about illicit arms, you must have a genuine program that will mop up illicit arms, not a program that is mopping up arms in one area and not mopping up arms in the other area. It means that politicians who also use arms for to advance their electoral interest must also tell their thugs to lay down their arms. It also means that when we are talking about people laying down arms, we must collect those arms and identify those that have been able to lay down their arms and those that have refused to lay down their arms. And in resolving conflict, you have to look at the short term, the medium term, and then the long term. There are certain things that we can do immediately. There are certain things we cannot do immediately. So we must be able to identify what are the steps we can take immediately, what are the short terms, what are the long terms, and what are the immediate things that we can do now. For me, I think the immediate thing the government can do now, which is easier for the government to do, is first of all to identify the stakeholders. There is no conflict without stakeholders. If you go to any community where they attacked on December 23, that Boko's local government and Mango, there are traditional rulers there. There are local government officials there. There are NOGI, the labor movement is there. Civil society organizations are there. You have to call them together. And when we are talking about people, traditional rulers, there are also people who are leaders of, Fulani community there, leaders of Hausa communities there. You need to bring them together. The youths in those communities, you need to put them together and find out their grievances. And when they table their grievances, you must come with a resolution that is genuine, that is transparent, that is fair, to all the parties. The government does not do that. The government employs fire brigade approach. When there is conflict, they bring them together, talk to them. But this thing has to be continuous. It has to be in fact on a weekly basis. They must, because if there is a crisis that is coming, there are always signals that that this problem is coming. For instance, they were attacked. The community were attacked on December 23. I can tell you without being just that in the next few days or few months, there's going to be revenge attack against the Fulani people. We all know that this will happen. What are we doing to identify the Fulani community that may be attacked? What are we doing to ensure that there's justice for those that have been attacked? How many people have been arrested? How many people are we prosecuting? How many people have been taken to court? Have we identified the key actors to ensure that they are arrested and taken to court? And when that attack took place on 24th and 23, 14 communities were attacked. It lasted for hours.
In fact, days.
For days. The killings were going on. Are you telling me the government was helpless in that kind of situation? Going on, and when they came, they usually come sometimes with about 100 Okada. They come with bicycles about 100. And the speed limit of bicycles moving from one place to another. So it means that when before they commit this crime, you can signal that they are on their way by the multitude of those vehicles that are coming to that community. After committing the crime, about 100 bicycles, and motorcycles are also being driven away. You will see them, you will notice them, and then you know that they are going to a particular place to settle down. So are we saying that there are no monitor mechanism? So the conclusion we can draw is that there is official complicity. There are collaborators in the police, there are collaborators in the army, there are collaborators, in all the institutions in the political sector. Because you find a situation where it's not also impossible that some of them are even sending their people into the army, to the police, to obtain that uniform in order to be able to commit crime, to use as an official license, to further their ethnic agenda. So it's a whole lot of problems that I don't think the government has shown, enough political will, enough responsibility. Because from the work we have been doing with MacArthur Foundation, they in Abuja, for instance, some years back, about 1 million youths, they were planning to block all the entrances to Abuja. They said they were going to, ground Abuja. And Chris said, led by his Comrade Zeke Ibrahim, he heard about it. What he did was to begin to negotiate, talk to those youth organizations. And eventually, with support of MacArthur Foundation, these youths, they did not, carry out that threat. Because there was constructive negotiation, they were able to, meet their people, talk to them, take them through the rudiments of local and international laws of how to wage their struggle without necessarily going violent. So these are the kind of things that we expect government to do. Ford Foundation is doing the same thing. All over the country, they set up, who are involved, regional meetings. And we were able to meet these communities one-on-one, lasting for days and weeks and years. And I can tell you that from our engagement with them, if the government had followed the recommendations that we made to them, these conflicts will not happen.
Now, talking about the government's response, I mean, we saw the failure of of governance. I mean, the security apparatus of the state in terms of its response. What implications does this have for the ongoing security crisis in the country, and what measures could be taken to improve that response time?
Well, the fact of the matter is that where there is insecurity, you cannot talk of sustainable development. The federal government has just presented a budget. State governments have presented budgets running to trillions of naira. But where there is no security, you cannot talk of development. That's why you find that when you are talking about road construction, how many contractors want to risk their life when they know they can be kidnapped? And even these roads you are talking about, when you build some of these roads, the bandits go there and destroy those roads because they need these bad roads for them to be able to kidnap people. So when you have a kind of siege mentality imposed on the state, you discover that your freedom is curtailed, not even by the state, but by circumstances, even beyond the purview of the state itself. So we cannot talk of development where there's no security. And that's why I'm thinking that it's not even about the budgeting of billions into defense and all that. The issue is Did you understand the issues on the ground? Are you ready to identify these issues and address these issues fundamentally? People have been talking about community policing. The government is pumping a lot of billions of money into policing. But what is the impact in the life of the average person? In other communities abroad where there's federalism, if there is a DPO in your community, the DPO knows almost everybody, every household. He knows the streets, he knows the people that live there, he knows the bad boys. The policemen, they parade the streets. They come and knock on your doors 1 a.m. if there's a problem. They know you, they know your neighbor, they know the stranger coming to your place to live. Our policemen don't know the people that they are governing. They don't know their culture, they don't know their heritage, they don't know the geography of the environment they are governing, they are policing. So how can we be talking about effective policing in that kind of situation? They are completely ignorant of the framework, of the architecture, the geography of the territory where they work. So there cannot be effective policing in that kind of community. What you are going to have is a situation where policemen will just be paid for staying in their police stations and then for staying on the road to extort money from people. At the end of the day, crime will be going on, nothing will happen. And that's why you find that in Lagos and everywhere all over the country, people are building their own security. The country has become one huge prison. Every street has a megad. They have a kind of after 10 o'clock you are not supposed to come in unless they know you. And people are building fences everywhere. Every estate pay money every month for security to individuals to protect them. So where is the responsibility of the state? What is actually the responsibility of the state when you cannot provide water, you cannot provide security, you cannot provide education, you cannot provide health? So these are the dangers that confront us today, and unless we resolve these problems, democracy is just going to be a farce.
You talked about community policing, which has actually been somewhat an issue. And another issue that has actually generated controversy has to do with the fact that Nigerians are asking to bear arms and themselves, be able to carry arms themselves. Yet the chief of army staff, Lagwaja, actually came out some a couple of days that is kicked against that, and tactfully saying that it's going to create a source of anarchy. While political analysts have also, I mean, countered his arguments, they talking about the need for Nigerians themselves to bear arms. What's your take on this?
Well, the fact of the matter is that as we speak today, there are non-state actors that bear arms. There are hunters that bear arms. There are private security organizations that buy arms. There are individuals that even obtain arms, but has that been able to resolve the insecurity in the country? If you are now saying that more people should bear arms, what kind of training do these individuals have? Why are we going to avoid indiscriminate use of arms, even in domestic violence, between father and son, between husband and wife, between in disputes in churches, in mosques, little disputes on our streets? So if you want to have a situation where everybody will bear arms, that's going to be an eye for an eye, which makes everybody to be blind. I don't think even in the US, arms are regulated. Arms are not just given to people anyhow. And I think even in the US now, because of the street violence, because of killings, mass killings and all that, they're also having a rethink of how they are going to address the problem of provision of arms, in the hands of non-state arms. So I don't think that is the solution. That's not the solution. If we want everybody to bear arms, we are going to have anarchy, and people will resolve little dispute, through firearms. Look at what happened, in some of our cities where people fight and then they break bottles, use stones, and all. If they are armed, they will resort into, you have not addressed the problem of courtesan, violent courtesan, and you are now asking me to go and buy arms. It means that you are saying that every court member should have access to sophisticated arms. So I don't think that is the solution. But it also tells you that our political leaders, they are at wit's end. They lack the creativity, and they are giving up, that they don't have a solution to the problem at hand. If they have a solution, what they should be talking about is that mop up of illicit weapons in the hands of non-state actors. Bring back those arms and then begin to bring communities together to train them about conflict prevention and peace building.
Talking about bringing communities together to training them in terms of peace building. And given the complex nature of the challenges, how can authorities effectively engage in dialogue with relevant authorities and stakeholders, including affected communities, the local leaders, the
Yeah.
CSOs, as well as other stakeholders, in order to develop a more holistic approach, in order to address this security and economic as well as social challenges. I know you've touched on this
Yeah,
earlier, but
yeah.
let's
You
get to
know,
it.
Nigerians are naturally organized. They are organized along ethnic lines. They are organized along religious lines. They are organized along artisan lines, mechanics associations, barbers associations, religious organizations, imams, pastors. And I tell you, in those communities, there are leaders. I'm not talking about elected political leaders. There are traditional leaders who emerge out of public trust. Most of them didn't emerge whether they voted for them or not, but the people have trust in them. People have confidence in them. Even these bandits we are talking about, there are people that they respect in their local community. So we will have expected the government to reach out to these stakeholders. For instance, let's say every mosque, every church on Sundays, on Saturdays, imams and pastors are preaching non-violence to their members, are preaching, peace building to their members, are going from one place in kind of, a kind of evangelism, going from one community to the other, talking to communities. Imagine a situation where teachers in secondary schools are teaching their students just 30 minutes in a week about conflict management and peace building, because we had these experiences when we were growing up in our secondary school and primary school days. The syllabus is there to teach you about little things about even respect for environment. They will tell you yes ẹni sí apá ọ̀tún má ṣe tẹ kòkòrò ni kòkòrò tí wọn kò lá ní olúwa ló lè dá. Turn your feet, don't ọmọ èṣù ló ń jà jẹ́jẹ́ lọmọ ọlọ́run ṣe jẹ́jẹ́. They teach you these things to build you up, to make you a cultured human being. Those things are no longer present in our primary school and secondary schools. And when you look at the kind of films our children watch, in Ethiopia and Saudi Arabia, they are regulated. But when people are exposed to violent films, right from the age of 3, the age of 4, what do you expect in that kind of society? Our secondary schools, our primary schools, we must realize that these are future leaders, and we must be able to build in their mind, is a kind of a spirit of peace and a kind of cultured heart, cultured mind that will make them to be responsible leaders tomorrow. But we are just not doing that. Look at the curriculum, our educational curriculum. You don't find this kind of training there. So we need to sit down and take a decisive measure, and that will involve a lot of things that we need to do. The religious aspect, educational, the schools, the NUT, they need to play very strategic role in meeting our people, to talk to them, to live in peace and harmony.
We've also had international condemnations on the killings in the Plateau as well as in southern Kaduna. And I want to get your perspective on this. What can international uh, support and collaboration contribute in order to develop a comprehensive strategies aimed at fostering peace within this region?
Yeah. I think there are two perspectives to international bilateral relations with Nigeria. The first one is um, donor organizations like Ford Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, Osiwa, DFID. I think they are doing a lot. In fact, in the absence of these organizations, the media, I think they are doing a lot in terms of peace building and conflict prevention. Now, we are not talking about state actors, the US government, United Nations, ECOWAS, and all that. I think there's little they can do because of the policy of non-interference in the affairs of internal affairs of nations, which is a guiding rule in the United Nations. So there is no, they cannot just bring their soldiers here or their policemen. The best they can do is issue statements and then give advice, organize training for some of our people on peace building, on civil engagement, civil military engagement. And I think a lot of countries are doing that, from the east and from the west. But the important thing is that what are we doing ourselves? Because we are the end of the stick. If there is crisis in this country, it's not America that will suffer. It's not Britain that will suffer. It's not United Nations in New York, the head office that will suffer. It is Nigerians. So the fact of the matter is that ọmọ tó bá ṣe apá ni bàbá ẹ̀ gbé. It's the child that raises up his hand that the father will be enthusiastic to lift up. So we must, on our own, show genuine commitment. And I must tell you that the National Assembly members, this idea of, getting, every time there's Christmas, New Year, what we just do is to distribute rice and beans, that Dr. Fahimi referred to as everyday politics. I don't think that is how to deal with. That's the only aspect of governance that people just have to eat. What about conflict? How many senators in Plateau? A senator was killed in 2012, in July 2012. Senator Gian Danton was murdered, and then the leader of the Plateau State House of Assembly, majority leader, Honorable, I think, Gian Fulani, they were going for a burial of 50 people that were killed. And these armed men came there and then shot all of them. A whole senator was killed. Still, nothing happened. So our senators that were giving millions of naira to go to their constituencies, what are they doing about peace building? What are they doing trying to bring these communities together on a weekly basis to hold meetings, identify trouble spots, and then bring out a mechanism to ensure the problems are resolved? They are not doing that. So the governance is not just about giving rice and beans to local communities. You must also be interested in peace building and conflict prevention. So their constituency allowance, I believe they have enough that they can, invest in peace building, which I think they are not doing at the moment.
We received a recent security report stating that a large number of the known culprits involved in the Christmas Eve massacre of over 200 Christians of Plateau. Uh, these known culprits included the poor Fulani, the jihadi militias, Miyeti Allah, Kataho, and Sosta, Ganda Koi, and Gada Iso, jihadi mercenaries, so to speak, from the Sahel.
Yeah.
And we are told that they are still nesting at the staging ground around the Sahara Hills, axis of Mongono Ananso Road, on the border of Plateau, Bauchi. And some have referred to the killings or the massacre in that region as ethnic cleansing, so to speak, or genocide, so to speak. And the Central Nigerian provinces are mostly populated by Christians, so to speak, and traditional religious adherents who have suffered, these episodes of massacre over the years, as well as land grabs, which you earlier helped us by giving us those historical context to the whole issue. One begins to wonder the unresponsiveness of the government. Will it not continue to breed suspicion of collusion and hidden motives, thus weakening the state's already diminished authority?
You see, the government, some of our people in government, they didn't want to hear the truth because it's bitter. When you talk about land grabbing, they tell you there's nothing like that. When you tell them there is an agenda that is, driven by jihad, they tell you there's nothing like that. When you tell you there is ethnic agenda, ethnic expansionism, they tell you there's nothing like that. But the reality is that these problems are there. The original design of the jihad was to, in 1804, was to take over the entire northern Nigeria with one folio agenda, which at that time was the standard of, of government. People taking over land through arms and all that. It was common in 1800s. So it's understandable. But you cannot continue that same agenda in 2023. But there are fringe elements, not necessarily. That's why we need to avoid stereotyping. It's not every Fulani person that thinks that you want to conquer, but there are fringe elements. A very tiny but vocal and violent group that still subsisting to this primordial agenda that, look, we must take over this country, we must Islamize it. That agenda is there. And there are also the same other group that also feel that, look, we must take over this agenda, we must Christianize it. They are there. So, and we cannot deny the fact that some of these people have collaborators internationally. ISIS has presence in West Africa, in Nigeria, for instance. So if there are cracks created by local subjective conditions, the violent elements, we move in to exploit that opportunity. That's exactly what is happening. Wherever ISIS hears that there are people who profess jihad, of course, they will look for them to give them support, like they have done in Syria, like they have done in Yemen, like they have done in Somalia, like they have done in Libya, that they have done in the Sahel region. So if there is any group that comes up today that says this is our agenda, that group will get international funding. Don't forget that it's an international network. They will get support. But that does not mean that every Fulani person or every Plateau person is a Christian shares that agenda. But if you are not careful, it may become the dominant trend when youth organizations, individuals that have no job, find hope in joining this organization because they can provide them with arms. And you know that when you are armed, your food is guaranteed. If you have arms, if you have AK-47 and go to a marketplace, you can take every food that is there and convert it to your own. You know that when you have arms, you go to farms, you can raid the farms and then your food and for yourself and your family is guaranteed. So these problems are there and we cannot run away from them. And that's why we are pleading with those in government that they must take decisive steps. They must do something. It has become a recurrent decimal, since 2009 when Yusuf Mohammed, the leader of Boko Haram, was killed. It has become armed groups everywhere in the northwest, in the northeast, in the middle belt, in the southeast. And people are saying that the southwest is the most peaceful, but that's a time bomb because when you are saying a region is the most peaceful, it also means it's the most vulnerable. It's the place that can easily be overrun. So we should not feel comfortable that it's a peaceful area. It also means that you are losing out because if the other areas are saturated and your own place is peaceful, eventually when they come here, you will be helpless. So we need to realize that threat to stability anywhere is a threat to peace everywhere. So we must ensure that the southeast is peaceful, the south is peaceful, northwest, northeast, but we need people leaders that have political will to take certain decisive actions. These people that carried out this crime since December 23, who are they? How many people have been arrested? If there is any terrorist attack anywhere, even in Iran, 24 hours, they get to the root of the matter. They know the actors. They may not be able to arrest them. What is the essence of DNA? What is the essence of NIN that you have done? What is the essence of forensic analysis? Because there is a crime anywhere, a single strand of your hair, your fingerprints, all you just need to do is to put it on computer, and your data, will come up. And we have a situation where terrorists are collecting money through banks. They give bank accounts to individuals, and they go to this bank account to take this money. People killed, they go there, they spend hours, they leave their fingerprints. So-called experts go there, and then you cannot fish out those that are responsible. What's the essence of our telephone lines? What's the essence of NIN, BVN? Are we deceiving ourselves? That people have, we have taken, our NIN and all that. Are we fooling ourselves? So why must we continue to delude ourselves? If we are not careful, see, instability is a threat to even those that are rich. Why people that are dying and all that, but the rich is also not safe. How many people can go to their constituencies now without police escort? For how long would they be able to do that? So at a point in time, you have to leave that political office and become an ordinary citizen.
So Wale Adeoye, thank you so much for your insightful perspective.
Thank you.